If you're planning to pick up a paint roller while you have some extra time at home, set it back down again just for a moment so you can be inspired by this story. It was shot right before the pandemic. Sharon made some key color changes to complete a living room makeover.
The homeowners wanted to bring a more rustic feel to their living room space, and they're starting with the fireplace. I love this heavier wood beam that they've added, and then they've continued that heavier wood with the treatment around all of the trim in the space. Looks awesome, but the wall color is not looking right. It's a little off balance with the pale yellow. So I've got two samples. I've got Pashmina and Thunder. They're both warm grays. Trying them out on the wall. We're going to let them dry because they're going to look darker, and then we're also going to look at them at different times of the day to see which one is perfect. And the winning paint color was Pashmina. It just had the perfect amount of warmth to really set everything off. I love how it's a great backdrop to this beautiful natural linen sofa. It balances the heavier wood elements and the brick fireplace. Now for the other paint colors, the ceiling I didn't want a stark white, so I used cloud white. And then for all the baseboard trim, window trim, and even the stairwell going downstairs, we painted out that golden oak with edgecomb gray. It's a really beautiful creamy color that allowed the other paint colors to stand out, like the black. I painted black on all the French doors and then even the window area just to give it a bit more of an industrial modern feel. The homeowners have had some wonderful trips to Asia and Africa, so I really used that to inspire the decorating. I was able to crop and blow up some of their own photographs. That's such a wonderfully authentic way to decorate and create a statement wall. Now I used the colors from that and the textures to really just finish off all of the accessories in the living room area, and then grounded with a nice Second Life rug. So again, it's all about texture. Now in any living space, you want to balance out the harder geometric lines with some roundness. So I got this beautiful soft, curvy leather nesting table with a little bit of wood. It's nice and open on the bottom, so again, it feels quite modern. When I started the project, there was a hole in this ceiling where there used to be a track light. So instead I installed a nice industrial lighting fixture that really finishes off that vignette. Now to carry that industrial feel through, the homeowner actually built this awesome console table out of metal and reclaimed wood. I think that's just the perfect place to showcase even more of their collectibles.
What a lovely makeover, Sharon. I love what you did with the trim around the French doors. Like, talk about big impact, and on the windows. Gorgeous.
Trim is so important in a room's design, aesthetic, and it's amazing that so many times people overlook it. So before you just paint all of your trim white, really think about the overall look and feel that you want for the room, because the size of the trim and the color can really have a big impact, as you said. And Trace, in that painted makeover that we just showed, I painted the French doors and the jambs in between black. We had to be really strategic with color because we had to think about where we wanted the eye to go. So I also did the black just around the windows, and we removed the decorative window grills, which was kind of nice to give it a more modern feel. And so those hits of black tied in really well with the furniture and the photo frames and all of those little other accessories that made it feel more contemporary. Now around the trim, I actually did something different for the baseboards and around the windows. Rather than use a white, I actually used edgecomb gray. And I just want to show really in detail here how if I'd used a white, it's very contrasting to the Pashmina. So the edgecomb gray is really soft and subtle, and that really allowed the contrast to the black window to be a little bit more calm. I didn't want it to feel really graphic because we had other elements in the space to do that.
It is so effective. Now, if you want to stay away from white, how do you decide on a color?
Good question. I think white is a default for that reason. It can be overwhelming, and we do have hundreds of white, so you don't have to stay away from white, but think about it. Think about the space and what you want to draw attention to in it. So if the trim is beautiful, the window trim is gorgeous, like in this bedroom that I'm showing you here, the trim was really pretty, so they highlighted it with cedar green, and then it became a feature in the room, so it's something that you want to draw attention to. And in a heritage home like this one that I shot several years ago, I still love this house, we wanted to draw attention to the beautiful heritage mantle and the deep windows. So we used Deep in Thought, which is a creamy white, against the sparrow wall. So again, it really added that perfect amount of contrast. But on the other side, think about it if you don't want to draw attention to the trim. Maybe it's really small, or you've got other things in the space, really beautiful artwork that you want to draw attention to. In that case, paint it the same color as the wall, the window trims, the baseboards. Sometimes just doing a slight sheen difference, maybe a satin finish, so you get a little bit of depth and dimension, but again, the color is nice and quiet and your eyes just sort of float around the space, which is really nice. But then I have another shot where we actually treated the windows differently in one room, and this is something that people don't think about. But on the one wall, we just wanted it to be quiet, so the windows are the same color as the wall. But then there's a beautiful picture window, and the frame and the trim was larger and more beautiful. So using a light white, an atrium white in that case, again, brings more contrast to that area, so it becomes a feature.
Now, what if you're staring at your trim right now and you're thinking, I do not like my existing trim? Do you have some tips for us to help that situation?
You know what, Trace? I do. I have a great tip, actually. When you're looking at trim and you're putting in some new trim, like you know, a lot of people go with the larger trim. So I've got this nice 8-inch one. But you know what? This in an 8-foot piece is around $30. So depending on your budget, I've got this cute little tip. You can buy a $7 piece, 8 foot, so compared the same, this tiny little decorative trim, and then you can add that to your existing trim. So you've got your little piddly trim down here, which nothing wrong with it, but maybe you've got higher ceilings and you want to beef it up. So install that little bit of wood trim there, around 8 inches up, and then just by painting it, Trace, like the baseboard, the wall in between, and that little decorative trim, your eye is tricked by the contrast, so it thinks you've got this really expensive 8-inch deep trim.
Excellent tip, Sharon, and such a great workaround to save you some money. Now, you also have another tip if you want to increase the depth of your trim.
Okay, you know what, Trace? Sometimes you might want to add trim where you didn't have it. Like in my house, I had that throughout the whole house. And every time I redo a room, I beef it up because there was no trim. It was very 80s. So just another trick is you can just get a piece of MDF cut 1/2 inch by whatever depth you want that matches your new window trim. And I put this through my entire house, even in the dining room here, laid that down, and then put the trim, I'm going to do it upside down, and then put the pretty trim on top of it so that I got a really nice thick beefy trim so that I could install my blinds as an inside mount. So it was functional as well as decorative. So again, lots of things you can do with trim depending on the look.
Okay, that's another great tip. So not just in the, the height of it, but also in the depth. I love it. Thank you, Sharon. Great lesson.
Yes.